and as we will hear today, a wonderful inspirational speaker. So we're so thankful to have you. Glad that you're here, Sandra. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Very excited to be here to see and meet all of you. I have a couple of stories to tell you today. I'm very excited about them. It's not all about cancer, it's about life, living a vibrant life. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about the strange and unexpected and kind of ironic journey that led me to the kind of consciousness that helped me to achieve a vibrant life. I am a dancer, and I say that in many respects. I think we all have our dance to do, whether we're getting our body moving around, or we're living out of our passion, or we're just involved in life. We do our own kind of dance. But I am a dancer, and I want to introduce my teammate, my dancing teammate. This is Olivia Sellers. She is a film producer, and she's filming me today and all of us. So vibrant life, that's the real message here, living the vibrant life. And they say that a picture's worth 1,000 words, so I'm going to show you a piece that CNN did on our team. We are called the Atlanta Classics Crew, and we are the official senior hip-hop dance team for the Atlanta Hawks. And the Hawks are doing so great. We just did a performance last week, and we do one every month, and we always do the playoff game. You won't see that this time. There will be a performance in this video, but you'll get an idea of what we're about. Now, some of you are going to need to kind of move your chairs. I thought we'd do this early so we could get the moving around over
Why don't we
with.
just go over here?
And do you have the remote, Olivia?
It's right there.
Okay. Just so you're able to see. I don't know if you want to move or turn your chairs or.
Get up is a problem.
That would help.
Hopefully this will work. I didn't change a thing.
Go
And it worked
for
before.
Then it'll probably work.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Did you see Ask Me?
Is that better?
I think that's fine.
I'll just put my head still.
Well, this dance team has arrived, smiling, full of energy, and ready to rehearse.
Let's warm up first.
They're a group of seniors, better known as the Atlanta Silver Classics Crew. You may have seen them groove at a festival, convention, or at an NBA game, particularly at the Atlanta Hawks games, where they perform often during halftime.
In our case, we're unique in the sense that we are all 50, up to 73. I'm the oldest one in the group, and we represent a feeling and an idea, a concept that our audiences relate to, which is life after 50.
Former Atlanta Hawks cheerleader Leslie Allison is the founder and director who decided 4 years ago she didn't want ordinary teens.
I think the whole fun and the cool thing about this group is that they dance to really current new songs, hip hop beats, so it's things that they're used to hearing younger people dance to, not necessarily over 50.
Tryouts are held every year, allowing each person to show off their best moves, techniques, and maybe even splits. While women make up a majority of the team, there are male dancers too.
Really, I do want to show people that seniors can get out there and do this kind of stuff. We can get out there, we can move, and even though people tell me I don't look as old as I am still 56 years old.
Many of these dancers feel like age is only a number.
The age of my spirit is the only number I'm interested in, not the age based on when I was born chronologically. I don't even like the word old anymore. That's for wines and antiques and things like that.
The crew practices several times during the week and spends countless hours perfecting a routine. Now, physical activity is not the only thing they're getting out of this experience.
Well, I quit smoking, and I've smoked 45 years. And I retired, and I guess it'll be 4 years in January that I quit smoking.
I eat healthy, I try to eat my greens and, just keep my diet in perspective. I've always heard that if you want to really prolong your life exercise, don't smoke, and wear a seatbelt. So dance falls right in there with the exercise.
As much as they all love to move, Leslie modifies certain moves to help prevent injuries.
A lot of times I'll show them knee placement where I think their knee needs to be over their foot to make sure that they're not twisting anything.
Like any team, this crew doesn't hesitate giving each other some tough love, especially on performance day.
We're critical of each other, and we will tell each other, you know, your arms aren't straight, or your feet are in wrong positions.
It's showtime, and while the crew is pumped up, the crowd sits quietly, unsure of what to expect.
Going out seeing skepticism and then leaving seeing exhilaration, that's priceless.
The audience loves it too, making it another successful performance by a group of talented seniors who prove that dancing is ageless. Tamika Jones, CNN, Atlanta.
So,
I'm sorry, let me figure out how to stop it.
Anybody need any more wine or anything? You want some tea?
Oh, no, thank you. Has it been around this way?
okay? Alright. So, specifically, vibrant life that I'm talking about is the potential life for people after over 50 years old. And go ahead. Do you want to scoot back over?
Yeah,
here?
but I don't wanna mess up
Go
your
ahead.
film.
Go ahead,
No,
it's
you
all
don't
right.
have to mess anything up. This isn't for production or film production, not for the movies yet. You can see this is a group of people, but this is only one example of a group of people, and you're another example of a group of people who are living a life that we never imagined. And what I mean by that is when I was a little girl, I was part of the movie generation. And I would go to the movies, and then you could have double features and stay all day. You remember that, right? Okay.
For a dime.
And yeah, exactly. And sitting there in the dark theater and watching the screen, I learned what society was like in my time of life and what was expected of me. And essentially that was grow up, meet my Prince Charming, get married, become his queen, lady, have a family, and live happily ever after. There were no real models for what happened after happily ever after. I mean, if you had an actress or an actor cast in their 50s and 60s, they were always grandparents. They were like an addendum to the family that they had already started. No real life was given to us. So, in a sense, we are creating a life that for which we have no models. We have no blueprint for the life that we're creating. There are a few people that we've seen, Sophia Loren, Jane Fonda, some celebrities who've said, I'm not going to give in to the classic idea of growing older. I'm going to create a different life. And that's what we're doing, and we're pioneers in that sense. This is a very exciting thing. And it's showing up in statistics. The Administration on Aging has told us that the senior population is the fastest growing population, not only in the United States, but in the world. We are the fastest growing segment of the population, which has a lot of implication politically, economically, socially. I'm talking today more about psychologically, how it feels to live a vibrant life and what that really means. And the other statistic is that people who are in their 90s or living to 90s and beyond, that number has tripled in the last 3 decades and is expected to quadruple between 2010 and 2050. And the reason that's so important is that we have time. Now, if you're a 50-year-old, you're probably, and you married in your 20s and had a family then, you've just been given a second life. I mean, if you're thinking of living to be 100, and you're 50, you've been given a second life because the potential for living to be 100 is very high. Does anyone remember a newscaster, actually a weatherman on the Today Show named Willard Scott? Yes? Okay. One of the things, if you'll remember, do you remember what he was famous for?
Recognizing birthdays.
Yes,
100.
for 100
He still
years.
does it.
Exactly.
He still does it.
Exactly. Does he still do that?
Yeah.
Well, more and more, I mean, it used to be when he first started, that was like maybe twice a year. But now, it's almost not even a news story. You have to be 120 to be a news story because so many people are living longer. So we have time. What are we going to do with that time? I define a vibrant life as a life lived out of one's own passion, an authentic life. Now, if you're trying to remember what that means, we need to look at children. Children are the people that live spontaneously out of their own dynamics. They turn over and sit up and walk and learn to talk, and we never interfere with this process. This is not a learned behavior. They are doing this spontaneously. This is authentic to them. They know how to do these things, and they follow an inner impulse to life, an impulse to action that is just its own creation. This is the authentic life. But what happens is that we begin to be conditioned, don't we? And it's good. I mean, we have to know that you look both ways before you go out in the street because the cars are coming or whatever. There are things that we need to learn because the world can be a scary place. And when I say a vibrant life, I'm not talking about a Pollyanna smiling all the time. I mean, life is hard. There are dangers. There are things that happen to us, difficult things. And sometimes we do have to cry for the pain in the world because it does exist. But a vibrant life means that we are in touch with our original dreams, our original authentic self, and we're discovering that, and we're living out of that more and more. What are we going to do with this life that we've been given so much more time with? Well, one of the things we need to do is to change our idea of what it means to live long. And I'm making a distinction between the idea of growing old and living long. Those are two different, very, very separate concepts. When we think of growing old, society has told us that this is a time of, however gradually or easily done or more difficultly done, a time of decline, a time of deterioration perhaps, and sometimes disease, ultimately death. It's this kind of a feeling. And we have an image of, we're fed images of what it looks like to grow old. And I had a woman in one of the groups that I was working with, she turned 60 and she said, it was all that I could do to keep from wearing orthopedic shoes. Her mother wore orthopedic shoes and her grandmother wore orthopedic shoes. She didn't have to wear orthopedic shoes. It was just in her mind, the image of what you're supposed to look like at a certain age was so strong, it was hard for her not to live up to that image. So one of the things that we need to do in order to cross the bridge from the idea of growing old and the idea of living long, because living long for me is, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to use that time? How can I live vibrantly and happily? What can I do with that life? And so many of you are already beginning to realize this, and this is a legacy that you are going to leave to your children and your grandchildren, because while we didn't have very many images of what it is to live long, what that looks like, what that feels like, our children will have that, our grandchildren will have that, because we are creating a new face of aging. That is what that film is about, really. We're dancing, we're having a great time, but the reason that the audiences love us, and this was such a surprise, one of the dancers said, you go in, what was it, with skepticism, and they come out with enthusiasm, something like that, because when we first danced, and the announcer came on and said, oh, the senior hip-hop team, everybody was like, okay, yeah. They're going to come out and do some geezer-looking thing, right? Right? And everybody was, and you could almost hear, oh, okay, we'll endure this. And by the time we were finished with our turns and jumps and splits and everything, they were on their feet. Now, not because we're the best dancers in the world, and not because we can wear these little shorts and boots that the other cheerleaders wear, but because we represent something that they almost can't explain, but they know. A new face of aging. What it really means to live long. The idea that we can actually do this. And the younger people feel, this creates a new future for me. This is a new idea of who I can be when I when I live that long, whatever number that might be. So, a vibrant life. Okay, it's a difficult process going from thinking of what growing old looks like and feels like and acts like to this new idea of what it is to feel and act this living long concept. And the reason that it is because we are burdened with this conditioning, this idea that growing old is a state of decline instead of a state of renewal. If you think that you have more years to live, you need to think of how you're going to fill those years. Well, one of the things that we need to fill them with is good health. And we have more access to good health than ever before. And many of us are taking advantage of that from a physical standpoint. But also, what I'm going to talk to you about today in terms of my personal journey is what I call the holistic concept. The holistic concept is mind, body, and spirit. It's the integration of these three systems that make up who we are as human beings that go into play in terms of our health. It isn't just our body, it's the way we think and it's the way we feel. And when I say spirit, I'm really talking about, I think of spirit for myself as a divine spark within us. And it's expressed in things like intuition, joy, passion, excitement, delight, discovery, discovering things that are new, or resurrecting old dreams. If you suddenly discover that you have 30 more years to live, you can't, just sit in a rocking chair on the porch and wait. You have to do something with that life. But that is more than just the body, that is the mind and the spirit working in conjunction. This brings me to my story. Actually, before I get to my story, I'm going to tell you another story, which is a metaphor for my story. The Arthurian legends, when King Arthur came up with the round table signified equality and peace, no more war. Well, here's a bunch of knights sitting around the round table feeling equal and peaceful, dressed in their armor and mail and helmets and swords, and their steady steed was out in the courtyard ready to go to war. What's a knight to do? All dressed up and no place to go. So the alternative to that was the Grail journey, the Grail quest. Now the Grail literally is the chalice that was used by Christ at the Last Supper, but it represents a journey toward enlightenment, with the meaning of life and the enlightened self and so forth. There were rules about this journey. One of the rules was that you could not go onto this path, onto this journey that somebody else had taken. You could get advice from them or help from them, but you couldn't go in the exact same path. It had to come out of your own. That's what I'm talking about, out of your own dynamic, out of your own authentic self. You had to create your own journey. The other rule was that you needed to go into the woods alone. Now the woods symbolizes the unknown, going into something that is strange to you and scary to you. Joseph Campbell, who was a great mythologist, came up with the term the hero's journey. Well, hero's journey, most of us, at least me, I went on my hero's journey with a foot in my back. I mean, I didn't choose cancer, but it chose me, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, actually. So he talks about the hero's journey, that the hero's journey always begins down into the pit, into the unknown, into the dark wood. All right, and then along the path you will meet characters who help you on your journey or hinder you on your journey. And sometimes the hindrances are things that are helping you find the path that's right for yourself. So it needs to be your own journey. It needs to be something that comes out of your own creation. It needs to be going into the unknown, whatever that unknown may be. For me, that journey was cancer. I took the holistic path, and I will tell you about what that's about. I've written a book about it. And the title of that book, I want to attribute to a very dear friend of mine who just recently came through a cancer experience. And I was talking with him, and he said that when he was diagnosed, he was very interested in literature, everything he could read about. cancer. And I said, well, what were you really looking for? He said, hope. And so the title of my book is Hope. A new way of looking at life and our experiences. And I'm going to read a few excerpts from my manuscript, part of which I brought today. "20 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. A 5.5 centimeter malignant tumor was removed from my right breast. There was still tumor in the margin, which means they didn't take it all. The cancer was rare. The prognosis was poor. Later tests showed cancer cells in my brain, liver, bone, lymph, and lungs. I was told by 3 doctors to have both breasts removed, a bone marrow transplant, radiation, and all the chemo I could stand. I was given a 46% chance of living 5 years. Ultimately, and it was a wrenching decision, I didn't do any of that. I chose the less traveled, the holistic path, and that's made all the difference in my life. Now, this is my journey. This is just what worked for me. There are many fine doctors in the world. There are many people who've had excellent results from working with doctors in medicine. But my path led me in a different direction. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did. I am a speech language pathologist. I chose a medical field. I love medicine. It's what I always wanted to be in. I have patients of my own. I work in hospitals. Currently I'm working at the Atlanta Speech School with deaf children, with language and so forth. But I've worked in hospitals with doctors, conferred with doctors about patients and their diagnoses and treatments and so forth. I was deep in the medical field and in the belief system. And I still love medicine. But that was not the path for me. That I believe things happen for a reason. And the reason that I had this kind of a diagnosis, this severe of a diagnosis, and a prognosis so poor, was that I was meant to go in a different direction. And so at first I fought that. I went to many doctors, and all of them were just awful. I met the worst doctors possible because, and I feel this in retrospect, that they were helping me to go into a different path. If I had met anyone I was the least bit harmonious with, I would have done medicine. I was completely prepared to do everything that they said to me to do, because when you're frightened for your life, well, at least I was willing to do anything that it took to save my life.
Did you do any of it?
Nothing.
You did nothing.
All that I did was I had a lumpectomy, which was the removal of part of that tumor.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know how much was left in there.
But
So
you knew some was left.
I knew some was left in there. Yes, I was still at high risk.
And it was
but
a very rare kind of.
it was very rare. It's called lobular. The usual kind is ductal. Ductal tends to be contained in situ, it's called. Lobular tends to do this configuration. They call it a targetoid configuration. And so it spreads this way, and it's much more difficult to contain and control. And that's why I had such metastasis, because of the nature of the cancer. And the prognosis for that cancer is poor. The odds were so bad, I had to look for an alternative. That's the way I felt. I just couldn't, I wouldn't go gamble with odds that bad. I had to look for something else. But that was only after I went to several doctors. Now I mentioned, I'm going to read something else. Okay, so body, mind, spirit. I lived at the time, I don't live there now, I lived across the street from Ann at the time. Right behind my home was the Chattahoochee National Forest, the wood, and I began to walk the woods. And that's why I did the Grail journey. I wanted to parallel my journey with that. There's a wood behind my house. Its path through tall trees stretches before me. I'd walked this path so many times with others in the community, with our dogs, chatting, laughing, chasing the errant pet, but I had not noticed these surroundings, not really. After the long weekend and the surgery, I had the strongest desire to walk the woods, to be alone, away from well-meaning friends and family who, desperate to do something when they can do nothing, bombard me with advice and attempted consolation. My best friend, Augie, who is my Westie, and I went early before others could join us with their discomfort. Augie walks with me. He does not walk in front of me, nor does he stop to smell some scent or explore the green beside the path as he's done before. He walks behind me, his distance even and unbroken. If I stop for some reason, he stops too, holding the same length between us. I know he is there and do not look back. I feel him watching me, watching over me. Those who have loved and been loved by a pet know this story already. They can't possibly understand, but they do. They can't know what is happening, but they do. They don't need information. They are already connected. He has gone from the woods and the earth now 5 years. He is in a place where he runs fast and free, and the squirrels are many and laughing with him at the joy of the chase. But he is not gone from me. He lives in my life. He is a beauty and a light that does not fade. When the time came, I did it without hesitation. I had promised that I would not let him suffer, and I kept that promise. I held him in my arms for a while before they gave him the injection. I made my heart slow so he wouldn't know that I was afraid. It did. I don't know how I did that. I can't slow my heart rate at will. I have no idea, but it did. I knew that he felt it beating hard, he would know and be afraid, and I wouldn't permit it. When he closed his eyes after the injection, then I cried. My dearest friend was gone. This time he had run ahead of me onto his own path in the woods. I imagine that is where he'll be waiting for me. Some promises you don't break. I made promises to my body in these woods. I discovered my body in these woods. Because my body was where the cancer lived, I began to think about my body and the relationship I'd had with my body through all these years that we'd been together. I never really talked to my body except to say, don't get sick and lose 10 pounds. I've talked to pets and plants with more cordiality than that. I marveled at that. Without love or attention, my body kept on working, heart kept on beating, lungs kept on breathing. I looked down at feet that kept on walking. It was the beginning of a love affair here in the woods behind my home. I began to talk to my body. At first I was a mother lion, ferocious with a cub in danger. I would talk to my body and tell it, hold on, little one, I'll find a way. Hold on, hold on. The rhythm of my words became the cadence of my step, and in time, terror would turn to purpose. I walked that wood with fierce intent. I can't stress enough how important it is to talk to your body. I talk to my body every day with gratitude and love. If a plant and an animal responds to love, how much more will your body respond to your loving it? And this is where healing begins. This is where health is. This loving relationship between a beloved, I call my body my beloved traveling companion. It's the most intimate relationship you will have in your life, your relationship with this body. And every time that you praise it and love it and recognize it, it responds. It responds with a stronger immune system so that you can ward off things that are coming your way, particularly in this flu season and so forth. I work in a petri dish. I work with little children who come in with runny noses and sneezing and so forth, and I do not forbid a hug. And yet I haven't been sick. They're dropping like flies. But, I mean, it really works. I cannot tell you how important it is to talk to your body as a companion with love. It will respond to you. That's body. I talked a little bit about the mind. I had to make a complete change about my idea of what the healing mechanism was for me. I chose the holistic path, and I can't even tell you how much I did. I just cloistered myself. I did 120 pills a day. I did colon cleansing every night, and meditation, which I'll talk about in a minute, and an entire life of healing. But when I went to my cancer support group, and I would start to talk, they would say, "Oh, you're a miracle. You're just a miracle," and dismiss me. In other words, to them, I was so far outside of their idea of what healing could be that they couldn't hear me. And I wanted to say, yes, I am a miracle. My body is a miracle, and you have a body that's a miracle too. It's not just me. I just haven't been selected for this. We all have this within us. We all have healing powers and the ability to explore new paths and try new things and so forth. But it was very hard for them. So changing our mindset, and part of staying young and vibrant life is exploring the unknown, is letting what is foreign to us into our life and into our way of thinking. I had to do this. I was, as I said, so steeped in medicine that I wanted the whole medical thing. I wanted to give the whole horrible problem to somebody who was an expert. Because the thing about hearing that you are having a potentially fatal disease is that you know nothing about it, and they want you to start treatment right away. What are you supposed to do? You can't become an expert in this overnight. And, of course, the urgency to begin treatment is there. So it's a difficult thing to turn around. And if I hadn't been so sick, I probably would have done what most people do. I would have just given it to a doctor, but it wouldn't have been the right thing for me. I never recommend a holistic path in terms of not doing medicine, because that may not be the right path for anyone else. But I do say that supporting the body, whatever treatment you choose, through the way you think, the way you treat your body, the way you feel about your body, and bringing the spiritual aspect into it, all of these are very, very important aspects of that healing process. So I really had to change my attitude. I, again, wanted the big medical thing. I wanted the medical complex. I wanted the beautiful office and the shiny instruments and all of those good things. Instead, I was led to a completely different place.
Call from service notified.
This is what's funny about
Call
that.
from service notified. Call from service notified.
I'm not going to
Selling
compete.
something.
Technology rules. I'm not going to compete. The first line I'm reading is, "It was one of those calls." See? There is magic. This is what I'm trying to tell you. There is magic. All right. Not bad news, but not the call I was hoping for. Mother, the long-distance voice of my second daughter, Kristen, calling from Washington, responds to my weary hello. It had been one of those days when nothing was happening, no progress. I wondered how much progress the cancer was making while I spent time looking for that elusive healer. I was looking for the hero doctor to save my life. I thought I wanted someone who was, a genius in the field, who considered my case unique, and if necessary, fell in love with me. I mean, I thought this was all reasonable. I wanted whatever it took. All right. I know what's in my mind. I wonder what's in the mind of the cancer. But I answered, "Yes, darling, what is it?" "Something good, I think. I work with a girl whose mother had breast cancer. She went to a doctor in Kentucky, and now she's cured. He's into the holistic stuff, and he does colon cleansing and chiropractics." I heard all of this with moderated excitement. Why would I want to drive 6 hours to Kentucky for a big fat colonic when I'm fighting for my life here? I mean, this didn't appeal to me at all. "What kind of doctor is he?" I replied calmly. "Well, he was an osteopath, but he does holistic things." Well, I wasn't interested at all, but I heard two inner words: the promise. I almost regretted that promise at this particular moment, but there it was. The promise I had made to my body. I will do anything to save you. And there it stayed until I made the appointment. I promised my body during those early walks that I would do anything it took to find a cure. I would open myself to all possibilities until I found a way to heal my body. It was a promise I made to my body as if I were talking to a child, then a best friend. My body and my mind grew up from the child to the best friend. I was prepared to endure anything for life. I wasn't prepared for Whitesville, Kentucky, and the dubious Dr. Cliff Robertson. He even had a movie star's name. How corny can you get? Nevertheless, I headed north 3 days later. The small Kentucky town did not disappoint. It met all my expectations. Old narrow streets, small sad buildings, gloomy even in the summer. Of course, this was how I felt inside. Everything looked like this to me. We left the city limits as instructed and arrived at a dirt road turnoff, which we took. This led to a dirt road clearing with 3 trailers sitting at adjacent angles. The first one with a sign in front that said simply, Dr. Robertson. Trailers? Trailers? I mean, what is this? What's going on? This is the last place I wanted to be. I had the kind of silly snobbery that came from being second generation formerly poor. Mother had spent her young life climbing out of depression, poverty, and here I was, my life in my hand, facing a trailer door on the outskirts of a little town in Kentucky. What was I doing here? Still the promise. I stepped up to the trailer door and opened it. I was still in Kansas. Instead of color and flowers and magic, Dorothy saw when she opened the door. I saw a makeshift waiting room, admittedly clean, spotless actually, with people in odd chairs with quiet expressions on their faces. I wasn't interested in the people or the faces. I sat down in the strange room and waited. I don't remember checking in. I don't even think there was a counter or any kind of place to check in. Perhaps I signed my name on a sheet on a table, I can't remember. What I do remember, and vividly, was the appearance some 10 minutes later of a streak of energy in the form of a slim man appearing to be in his 60s or 50s or 70s. Not young, but timeless, just the same. I'm aware, as I write of him now, that it isn't his physical appearance that stays in my memory. It is the way I felt when he was in the room, my sense of him. A slim, only slightly round-shouldered man came whizzing through the waiting room, smiling, eyes twinkling and nodding to the patients there. Some, like me, were new and barely reacted, but the patients who knew him began to beam. I noticed them first and then realized the man was beaming too. Full of energy and optimism was the doc. He was only in the room a minute as he passed through to another area to my right, but the sensation was indelible. He may have smiled or nodded or even spoke a few words as he whizzed by, I don't know. All I knew was the whiz of him. No doctors, no heroes, no plan, no path. Please, I was totally depressed. I was sitting in a trailer expecting nothing Kimmy could promise to my body. All I felt was the sensation of having been in a brief breeze of some intensity. I was led to this strange man in this strange place who gave me a program that I went home and did, deciding that, I'll just get healthy and then I'll do all the stuff the doctors want me to do. And I just kept walking that path. 14 months later, they thought they saw a new mass. Well, maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I had taken my life in my hands and I just had to make the right decision. So I went in, I had a mammogram done, but it turned out that it wasn't a new mass. I had had breast implants like many, many years before that, and they had ruptured. And so they took them out. The good thing about that story is that when you take breast implants out, you have to give a breast lift or else your breasts are down to here. And, well, maybe down to here. So they did that. So he took a lot of breast tissue and gave it to the pathologist. It took the pathologist a month to go through that breast tissue. The cancer was gone. It had worked. I was cured. Even the doctor said, you cured it. One last piece I want to read to you. I said body, talked about that, mind, attitude, opening up to new things. Maybe the path isn't the path you think it's going to be. Maybe it's a different path. Open up to that. And the third thing, spirit. If I had to do this healing over again and I could only do one thing, it would be meditation. And it's the thing at which I am the least proficient. It's hard. It has gotten easier over time, and now I can sit for a full 10 minutes without wanting to run from the room. But in the beginning, 3 minutes seemed like an eternity. Every impulse in me wanting to get up and walk away, fidgeting, moving around, all the things you're not supposed to do, would insist themselves upon my consciousness. Clearing my mind, that was a joke. My mind went into hyperdrive, thoughts whirling around my head with no intention of calming. I attribute it to the fact that I lived in my mind, which is a trait of only children, which I am. But I think it is rather a common response to the direction, don't think. That's what you're supposed to do in meditation. You're supposed to clear your mind of all thought. I would set a clock beside me and peek at it every minute or so, but I did not give up. I had thought I couldn't meditate to save my life. But when it came down to doing something that actually might save my life, I found that I could do a great deal more than I thought I could. Why would I choose this healing technique at which I am so inept? Because it is where the power is. The synergy of mind, body, and spirit lives here. The body holds its still purpose, the mind surrenders, and the spirit exalts itself across the dark boundary and makes life the place where anything can happen. The quantum field of potentiality lives here. I live there. That's my story. I lived a regular life before cancer came along. And it was the best thing, as I said, that ever happened to me, because it moved me into a conscious life with the feeling that I don't know how long I'm going to be here. As far as I'm concerned, that's not something I think about. I just think how I'm going to do the dance for the day. So I hope that you will consider these things that I've talked about. Consider the myths of aging that have permeated our thinking since we were very, very small. What it means to grow old. Instead, what it means to live long. Giving up the myths about, well, I'll never feel better than I do today. Nothing is reversible. I can never feel better or look better than I do right now. That is a myth. Energy comes from the spirit. Energy comes from passion. The body responds to the passion and the spirit and the mind and the desire to live young, to live long. None of the characters in the movies I saw were sophisticated or sexy or sparkling or romantic or any of those things. We're creating that ourselves in our own life. And so do your dance. That's my message for the day. Whether it's singing or sculpting or loving your neighbor or just enjoying every moment of your life. And here's a little thing you can do. You know, when we wake up in the morning, we usually think about, or I do, I think a lot of us do, we think about what we're going to do that day. Or possibly we're worried about something we're forced to think about. The alternative to that is usually think of happy thoughts, but I'm saying to you, think of what is not expected. Think that something is going to happen that you can't even imagine yet. And when you think that, you will begin to look for that. And when you look for it, it will come. Thank you.
Well, wow. That is just a remarkable story.
It is, I agree.
I'm very, very
Nobody's more
inspired.
surprised than I am.
I'm very inspired, and thank you so much. I'm sure all of us can agree. You have really given us food for thought, ways to handle our life, ways to dance, our dance, and do what we are inspired to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you very much for that. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
When are you gonna perform again at the Hawks, where we can see you?
28, 7th, 27th.
27th
Yeah.
of February.
Okay.
Now, you know what? I've left some cards here on the table. One is my card, which has my phone number on it, and you're welcome to call me for anything. And then the other one is the card of the Classics crew, so if any of you want to join us, come and audition. We have it once a year. We have it once a year. I know. And you're thinking, oh, no, that's something need to put into your mind as a new possibility.
All these ladies have already been on YouTube dancing.
I'm sorry, say it again.
They've all been on YouTube dancing before, so they can't say they don't know how.
Oh, see?